Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you all for joining us today, which is the first of two webinars that I'll be delivering on behalf of core surgery recruitment. So my name is Senny Malvargadam. I'm the chair of core surgery, the Training Advisory Committee, or also known as CSTAC, and I'm also chair for core surgery recruitment and chair the committee that delivers that. The webinar today is aimed at providing you all with an overview really of what core surgery recruitment is, what it aims to deliver, and the framework with which we will do that. And quite importantly, because of the changes and the response to changes, it will provide a rationale for the changes for 2023. Now, this webinar will be recorded, so those of you who've not been able to join us live, in due course it will be posted on the HE YouTube website, and I think we will signpost to that site as well from the MDRS website as well. So if you want to search for it through that, you will be able to find the link to see this webinar. So please do inform any of your colleagues who've not been able to join us this evening that is a way of seeing this. Now, just by means of some housekeeping, which I'm sure you'll all be very much aware of being used to attending virtual events, I think you'll all be on mute in terms of when you came into the platform, but you will all have access to the chat box function. So if you do have any questions, what I would ask you to do is to please populate them in the chat box. And we've got some members of the HE team here which will look at those, collate those into themes, and at the end of the presentation we will try to answer as many of those as possible if we haven't already done so in the presentation. We've also got some colleagues from the MSRA work psychology group here as well, so they will also be able to add in terms of additional information that I may not have if you have questions around that. I believe also the HE team are going to put in the chat box a form as well for you to use to complete if you have any further questions, any particular additional information we can take away and perhaps put live up in terms of our applicant guidance. Then please do feel free to add them there. And also if there's any particular additional information that isn't currently published about the MSRA that you'd like put on there to help you with your application, again, please use that form and we can pass that on to the MSRA team. Okay, so I will now then start off with the presentation, and we're going to start really looking at the principles and governance around what we aim to do. Now, if we look at selection goals with regards to what we want from core surgery recruitment, what we aim to do is to select the most able candidates with an aptitude for and ability to be trained as surgeons. So we wish to do that and select from the most able applicant pool and look to and who will enter core training on completion of foundation training or equivalents. So it's really looking at those individuals at that level of training, which is our applicant pool, and try to select the most able from that group. What's important here is it is not a selection of surgeons in training. Also, what we aim to do is to recognise an interest, a career in surgery. We wish to, as all recruitment teams wish to do, is promote equality and diversity and really widen the participation pool of those entering into core surgical training. Now, we also wish it to be a consistent and transparent process. And also, again, as part of what we're asked to deliver, we aim to deliver a selection process that limits the requirement of clinicians taking time away from service and service commitments. So let's talk then about the governance. Who is it that makes decisions about core surgery recruitment, and how is that delivered? Well, in terms of the government, the recruitment processes into postgraduate training are agreed by the 4 nations of the UK through the Medical and Dental Recruitment and Selection Programme. So this is the MDRS recruitment group. Ultimately, it is HE in England, but this oversight group across the UK that are responsible and accountable for the delivery of core surgery recruitment and all recruitment. What you have for core surgery is the Core Surgery Recruitment Steering Group. So I'll call it the CSRS here for want of a quick acronym. And it's the responsibility of this group to advise MDRS on proposals for delivering core surgery recruitment. That group is consistent and made up of representation from CSTAC, which is the training. So this is a group comprising the head of schools of surgery of all the deaneries across England. So if we go back to the governance, and this is really the governance around the delivery of core surgery recruitment, it is the CSRS group that advise MDRS with regards to the delivery of core surgery national recruitment. And that CSRS group is represented by members from CSTAC, the Training Advisory Committee, core surgery TPDs, surgical specialty SAC members, so that's members from each of the 10 higher surgical specialties, COPS, which is the Confederation of Postgraduate Schools of Surgery. So that's a group comprising the heads of schools of surgery in each of the regions. And we have a couple of representation from there, as well as lay and asset and BOTA reps. So moving on from there, we'll look at really then the review of 2022 recruitment, because that really informs what the changes have been for 2023, and therefore why it is that we've had to make those changes and where we've come with regards to core surgery recruitment. So 2022 was the second year of virtual delivery, the first being in 2021 as a result of COVID. The framework was unchanged from 2021, so it comprised of a portfolio self-assessment to shortlist, and that self-assessment score provided us with a pool of applicants, which equated to our interview capacity plus 15%, and it was that interview capacity plus 15% that was progressed to portfolio verification, and that was necessary to validate those self-assessment scores. Now, after those portfolios were verified by a team of consultant assessors, applicants were then shortlisted based on the number we had available for our interview capacity. What was retained from 2022, which was also there from 2021, was the appeals process. So once candidates and applicants had been identified to be shortlisted, all applicants were given the opportunity of appealing the verification scores they received for their portfolio. Upon conclusion of that appeals process, we had that final applicant number that progressed to a single station interview, and subsequent to that, offers were made. Now, what were the changes from 2021? So although we used the same framework, what we did find was that we received quite considerable feedback, both from applicants and assessors, regarding the portfolio domains, what was assessed, how they were assessed, and what the scoring criteria was. And because of that significant feedback, we undertook a major review and rewriting of those domains with the CSRS group, and that included our asset and BOTA and lay representatives. That then gave us our 9 domains that were used in 2022, as well as descriptors around the scoring and the evidence required for that scoring. Now, in addition, because of the experience gained from delivering these assessments virtually, HE were comfortable and allowed us to increase our interview capacity. So that was done significantly from 2021 to 2022. So what did that look like in numbers? Well, if we look at this and we look at the total number of applications, we received slightly less applications in 2022 than 2021. But actually, the number that we were able to invite to portfolio verification increased by about 50%. So from just over 1,000 to just over 1,500. And it actually meant that we were also able to interview a lot more candidates. So 884 in 2021, but actually 1,259 in 2022. And then as a surrogate marker of really how well do we do with our portfolio domains, we looked at the number of appeals, and I'm not able to show you the exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that from 2021 to 2022, there was a dramatic reduction in the number of appeals, despite there being over almost 500 more applicants progressing to that portfolio verification stage, and so having the appeals process open to them. So that told us in some respects that a lot of things we were doing were palatable and were acceptable. And also what we found was that from 2021, where for the first time we didn't have 100% fill rate, we actually restored that in 2022. And one of the key things around that was around behaviours of applicants who received offers. And in 2021, it wasn't simply that there wasn't enough offers being made, but actually we found a lot of applicants declining offers, and there seemed to be a pattern where applicants were actually applying to multiple specialties, and it was geography that was trumping everything else. So this idea of South Eastern London centric. Now, introducing the commitment to specialty domain and beefing that up, which was really important to us from 2021 to 2022, seemed to give us the candidates that had that true surgical interest and perhaps helped us achieve that 100% fill rate. Now, what did it take to actually deliver 2022's recruitment? And this is really crucial to understand. Well, we talk about it in terms of consultant days. One consultant giving 1 day of their time is one consultant day. So in the portfolio verification phase, we actually needed around 180 consultant days to be able to assess those 1,500 portfolios to verify the scores. For the appeals process, we needed around 24 consultant days to deliver that. And then for the interview process, we needed a further 180 consultant days. So you can see that we're looking at nearly 400 consultant days to deliver core surgery recruitment. Now that completely dwarfs every other surgical specialty and many other specialties for that matter. So when we looked at 2022's recruitment, what were our successes? What were actually our weaknesses and threats? Well, firstly, we achieved that 100% fill rate, really important as a marker of success of recruitment. We were able to significantly increase the number of applicants where their portfolio was verified and also the number of applicants that were interviewed. So we gave as much opportunity as to as many candidates as possible to have multiple forms of assessment. So we were able to hopefully then identify those most able from that applicant pool. And also we had significantly reduced appeals and queries to HEE, which again gave us some surrogate marker that we were certainly on the right track with regards to the portfolio domains, how we were assessing them, and indeed the clarity of the information provided around evidence. Now, what were our weaknesses and threats? Well, the number one thing we found was that there was a significant reliance on quite a fragile assessor capacity. I take you back to this notion of 400 consultant days. Well, firstly, to give you some context with that, where we had face-to-face interviews and face-to-face recruitment, the portfolio was integrated in the interview phase. We didn't have this portfolio verification phase, which introduced another window where assessors were required and actually almost doubled the number of consultant days needed compared to previous recruitment rounds in the face-to-face arena. Now, What we found with this assessor capacity was that there was a very significant threat that that recruitment in 2022 was not able to be delivered, despite having a very strong response to a call for assessors and interviewers, both for the verification and the interview phase. We had a lot of individuals and assessors who just weren't able to fulfill that commitment in those two phases. And we were having to bring in and identify substitutes very late in the day in terms of how close it was to that either verification day or that interview day. And certainly for the portfolio verification, there was a significant burden on individuals in the CSRS group to take on many additional portfolio verifications outside of normal working time so that we could deliver that phase in a timely manner so that interviews could also take place at the correct timeline. Now, the second thing we found in terms of weaknesses or threats was really that the portfolio domain assessment consistency and fit for purpose was still being questioned, with some feedback received from applicants and assessors around some of those domains and some of the consistency of scoring of some of those domains. So when we looked at 2023's recruitment, 2022's review was pivotal in deciding how we went about delivering that. And priority number one was to identify a resilient framework for delivery of core recruitment in 2023. And I cannot underestimate how significant a threat we had that we were not able to deliver on core recruitment last year because of that reliance on assessor capacity, which was quite fragile. Now, priority number two was to continue to improve the portfolio and interview assessment, again looking at specific markers of consistency of scoring, ensuring we widen participation and not discriminate individuals, particularly this argument around paying for points. And also that allowed us to differentiate candidates across a breadth of knowledge, skills and behaviours. So therefore, particularly in the interview phase, looking at how we can deliver that so that the most able candidates can continue to score points, so that there's a much broader range of what you can assess and examine. Okay, so when we looked at 2023 recruitment, again, to give you some historical context, this came really in terms of the significant increase in applications that core surgery has had over the last few years. So if you look at 2019, core surgery had 1,690 applications. Fast forward that to the last 2 years, and certainly 2022, we had 2,300 applicants. So we're looking at 800 to 900 increase 2021 to 22 compared to 2019, and that's come in the space of simply 2 to 3 years. So that's a significant increase. Now, this far outstrips our ability to interview and our interview capacity. And so shortlisting is an essential tool for core surgery recruitment. What we have used was portfolio self-assessment, but portfolio self-assessment required verification for that quality assurance that we were progressing and shortlisting the most able applicants. And this added that additional step in the virtual recruitment framework. And as I've spoken about, added significant demand to the consultant days requirement. And so because of that very significant threat to our ability to deliver core surgery recruitment, we had to ask the question, are there alternatives to the current shortlisting mechanism that we have? And that's where we went out to MSRA and we went out to look for alternatives. And what came back was the MSRA. Now, the MSRA, the multi-specialty recruitment assessment, is something that has been around for a number of years, has been utilised by other specialties, and it has been presented forward as an option to core surgery in the past and also to the higher surgical specialties. Now, just by means of what it is, the test comprises 2 papers. there's a professional dilemmas paper, and what that paper does is an assessment mapping to the GMC GCPs, the generic capabilities in practice. The second paper is the clinical problem solving paper, which is an assessment mapping to the foundation curriculum generic knowledge, and that's 50% of the score. Now, if I take you back to our aims of core surgery recruitment, and that is to select the most able candidates from the eligible applicant pool. Now, that eligible applicant pool are those individuals who are in foundation who will complete foundation training or foundation training equivalents. In addition, we wish to select candidates who have the ability to prosper in core surgical training. Now, when we look at the GMC GCPs, that is the one element of the curriculum which is common to every single curriculum. It progresses from foundation and into core surgery curriculum and higher surgical curriculum. So therefore, when we look at the professional dilemmas paper and it assesses those competences, it is an insight into suitability for surgery, because those competences will simply be built upon in core surgery and then in higher surgical training. Now, when we look at the clinical problem solving paper, it maps to the foundation curriculum generic knowledge. And this again aligns to our aims of recruitment. It is not a recruitment of surgeons in training. We want to ensure we widen the participation pool of those applicants coming into surgery. And so it is appropriate to assess individuals to the level of knowledge and opportunities for training that they have had. And that is, by all applicants, foundation training. And so to assess them against the competencies gained in the foundation curriculum allows us to identify the most able candidates, those who have shown the greatest ability to comprehend and assimilate the curriculum they're currently undertaking, and that does give you an insight into actually their ability to succeed and thrive in the next curriculum, which would be core surgical training. So the second thing about the test is that it is a free to take online or test centre test. And there's a 10-day window. I'll explain at the end of the piece really the timelines around that. Now, it is currently utilised by a number of specialties for different purposes, including neurosurgery in recruitment. And so it's not the same as saying the MSRA will be used the same way in every specialty. And I will explain exactly how we are using it. And there are a number of equality and diversity checkpoints that do exist, with further evaluation ongoing. And the MSRA team undertook a very large piece of work around equality, diversity and inclusion from 2020's recruitment, which they will be looking at publishing in due course. And there are just some issues just around making that available in the public space, which will be addressed. So there will be further information around that equality and diversity element, which I know has been a concern raised. And finally, there are free sample questions available to applicants to provide a familiarity with the question style. Now, individuals who are quite savvy will know that information out there is already there on the GP National Recruitment Forum, and that those sample questions are simply a small number of sample questions, allowing that familiarity to be present for applicants taking the test. What I am informed by the MSRA group is there will be a much larger bank of questions around a practice paper that's going to be released prior to all applicants taking the exam for this recruitment round. So there will be additional materials there for all applicants to use, and on that note, both ourselves in recruitment and the MSRA group do not advise applicants to pay for any additional question banks or any external companies looking at preparing you for the MSRA, because those questions are not approved by the MSRA steering group and may not actually be representative of how those questions will appear in the actual test and what is being examined and assessed. And that's really important because that also aligns to our aims of recruitment, which is ensuring that widening of participation, ensuring everybody has an equal footing in terms of going through our recruitment. Okay. So just a little bit more on this before we come on to our rationale about the MSRA in core surgery, just because I know that this may be new to many people. So the professional dilemmas paper, what it does is it measures an understanding of situations that arise for doctors in the NHS during a foundation placement. And the judgment is in choosing more or less appropriate responses to that specific situation. So it doesn't require specific knowledge of experience in specialty training, but does assume general familiarity with typical primary and secondary care work. So it shouldn't matter whether you have or haven't undertaken a variety of placements or not in your foundation training to actually be able to answer these questions. And the test covers 3 core domains, which are linked to those GMC, GPCs, which are found in every single foundation, core and higher curriculum. So that's professional integrity, coping with pressure, empathy and sensitivity. Now it consists of 50 items and there are 95 minutes in which to complete that paper. Then the clinical problem solving paper. So this is clinical scenarios that require an exercise of judgment and problem solving skills to determine appropriate diagnosis and management of patients. So it's not a test specifically of knowledge, but actually your ability to apply that knowledge. It is based on foundation level clinical competence and tests that higher level of knowledge synthesis of medical knowledge that you will gain. Now, again, what you'll find in this test is that the settings may vary considerably from primary care to different secondary care placements. They are very wide-reaching, and it should not need you to have had a placement in any of those specific specialties to be able to undertake this test and perform well in this test. It consists of 97 questions, and it's to be completed in 75 minutes. And just to sort of elaborate on that point, which I know was a concern raised, that if you hadn't done, let's say, for example, a paediatric placement in foundation, that you'll be disadvantaged if questions sit in a community paediatric environment or a hospital paediatric environment. One way of looking at that was really looking at the scores and the mean scores that have been achieved by the MSRA in all the specialties that currently use it. And those specialties are very wide-ranging, from neurosurgery to general practice. And what we find when we looked at those scores and those scores were given to us is that generally the mean score across specialties, there is very little variation and deviation. And in fact, our neurosurgery applicants tend to score amongst the highest of all of the applicants who take the MSRA. And the other point which we wish to probe, which we asked of MSRA, was, well, okay, if we are introducing this, is there a lead time to it? Is there that if you know that the MSRA is coming and you take more time to prepare because you knew about it in foundation year 1 or in medical school, does that mean you score more highly? Well, actually, we didn't see that. And in every other recruitment that has used the MSRA, when we've looked at the mean scores do not change from the first year of implementation to any subsequent year. And practically all of the specialties that have introduced MSRA into recruitment didn't have a previous pilot year. They introduced it. So you might see that perhaps would have been the case, but it isn't. That there isn't a significant change or increase in that mean score. And do remember that with regard to the MSRA, it is a test to determine your competence against your fellow applicants. And it's there simply to allow us to shortlist. Okay. So now let's look at how did we validate this for core surgery? How were we allowed to say, well, okay, we have faith in this process and can actually use it in core surgery recruitment? Well, what we did was we sought to test a specific hypothesis, and that was really the null hypothesis that the MSRA test was non-inferior to the current portfolio assessment that we used to shortlist applicants into core surgery. Now, it may, in time, prove to be a better way of shortlisting. We don't have that data yet, but certainly for us to introduce this, we needed to establish non-inferiority. And how could we do that? Well, actually, we could do that because there has been a de facto pilot of the MSRA. And that's because when we look at 2019, 2021, 2022 recruitment, we can see that a very significant number of applicants to core surgical training have also sat the MSRA test because they are intended to also to apply to other specialties. And you can see that that number totals nearly 2,000 applicants who have taken the MSRA test and gone through core surgery recruitment as it has stood for the last few years. And you can see that number is a third of candidates last year that had already taken that test. So we were then able to actually undertake statistical analysis of those individuals who took the test and map them against how they did in core surgery recruitment. And we looked at those who were invited to interview and those who were not invited to interview. So this was testing our null hypothesis. Is it non-inferior to what we have right now to shortlist candidates? And what we can see is the mean score of the MSRA for those who were invited to interview is significantly higher from those who are not. So that score of 514 versus 474. That is statistically significant. And what I've shown you there is the analysis of 2022, but actually we saw exactly the same trends when we analysed 2020 and 2021's recruitment applicants. So on that basis, and with that statistical test applied, we were able to show that the MSRA test could be used as a shortlisting tool because it was essentially identifying the same pool of applicants that our self-assessment of portfolio and subsequent verification was doing. And this just gives it to you in a more diagrammatic form. And what you can see really here from 2021 and 2022 was that when you look at those who were actually invited to interview and those who are successful at interview, it's significantly a different population to those who are not invited at interview. And do remember that we are shortlisting about half of the applicants that we receive. So we are providing a natural buffer to not only those who are likely to be interview successful, but actually that cohort who are currently being shortlisted. So because of that de facto pilot and therefore our ability to actually show validity to this MSRA for shortlisting, we were able to propose to implement this into 2023's recruitment. Now, what we want to do with 2023 recruitment, as always, is we want to retain multiple modalities of assessment. So we have multiple opportunities to assess an applicant's performance. If you can view an applicant in multiple different ways, that eliminates error, it eliminates bias to poor performance on a particular day, and hopefully then gives you the most rounded view of that applicant to be able to assess their suitability for success in recruitment. Now, with that in mind, the MSRA is only one component. It allows us to shortlist still to a very large number of applicants, and only half of those will ultimately be successful in achieving offers. Therefore, there is still a very significant weighting that we wish to apply to the portfolio, which will be retained, and the interview to measure that applicant's suitability for core surgical training once we've got that shortlisted group. Okay. And then just to speak a little about our second priority, which was to continue to improve the portfolio and interview assessment. So to do that, we undertook a further review of the portfolio domains. Now, there were some things that MDRS mandated we needed to assess, review and remove, which is common to all specialty recruitment. But moreover than that, we looked at the appropriateness of assessment of some elements within the domain, but also how consistently could you verify the evidence, and actually how could you compare evidence in particular domains when they can often be very, very contrasting. So there are changes, therefore, to the portfolio assessment, and the second webinar that I'll deliver on Wednesday night will go through all of this in a lot of detail. But what's really important to say about the portfolio assessment for 2023 is we are not asking for any additional achievements. In fact, what is happening is that there are multiple elements being stripped out of what is required for the portfolio assessment, but no candidate will be asked for additional achievements. So you won't be having goalposts changed late in the day with regards to suddenly a new piece of evidence that's required. So let me take you through just a little bit about those changes, which we will elaborate much more significantly on in the webinar on Wednesday. So firstly, the MDRS mandated changes. The first one is that we are not permitted to use any named courses, and in fact courses themselves raised a lot of debate in every iteration of our reviews of portfolio assessment. And so we have removed all courses from any portfolio that needs portfolio assessment. No MRCS Part A. So again, that's come from MDRS, but actually there's been a very strong opinion from heads of school and core surgery TPDs around this in terms of not including the MRCS Part A in portfolio assessment. And the principal reasoning behind that has been that it perhaps encourages a practice we don't want to encourage, which is individuals to take the MRCS and then perhaps if they fail it, burn attempts at that, which can then become an issue that's picked up when applicants enter core surgery training and they have less attempts remaining to undertake it. So in any case, MRCS Part A has now been removed as a point scoring element of the portfolio. In addition, MDRS have asked us to remove all intercalated degrees. And again, that looks at differential opportunities with intercalated degrees only being offered at some universities. Now, what we've done beyond that in the CSRS group is that we've looked at all degrees and we've removed them from the portfolio assessment. There are a number of reasons behind that. And in part, it goes back to the utility of what are we assessing and what do we place the greatest value on assessing. And it's important to be aware that we need to ensure that when we deliver recruitment, it's a fair process for international as well as UK graduates. And ensuring that we have that consistency of what a degree is internationally to what a degree is in the UK has always been a challenge. And also, in terms of certain degrees, and is that a differentiating element? It's not a significant differentiating element in terms of the applicants in previous recruitment rounds. So there are a very small number of individuals who score on additional degrees, but it's not a differentiating element, so we have removed that. Secondly, we've also removed the prizes section. And again, there was a lot of inconsistency around, or certainly variation around what prizes were offered by applicants in previous recruitment rounds, and therefore inconsistency arose around how to assess those. And although a specific prize is going to be retained in one of the domains, we are eliminating the prizes section as actually point scoring. Nextly, from a leadership and management domain, again, this was a very challenging domain with regards to consistency of scoring, where there was a very significant variation in what evidence was being put forward for leadership and management. And it was felt that actually assessment in a portfolio was not the most appropriate way to assess leadership and management. And so that has been removed from the portfolio assessment and will now be integrated into the interview assessment, with a slight variation in the interview question that all candidates will be asked to prepare. And then lastly, what we have done off the back of all of that is then amalgamate the domains and include the presentation achievements within multiple domains to allow for a more slick portfolio that applicants will then be able to upload, and hopefully minimize the amount of evidence and therefore the labour required to actually upload that. So therefore, for 2023, the 4 domains that will be assessed are: number 1, commitment to specialty; number 2, quality improvement and clinical audit; number 3, presentations and publications; and number 4, teaching experience and training qualifications. Now, I will go through all of that in a step-by-step approach in the webinar on Wednesday. Okay. So the reason this is all done is that the aims of the portfolio is to allow us to assess applicants across a breadth of achievements that determine their suitability for core surgical training. We want that consistency of achievements where they may vary, and certainly evidence may vary, and we need that to be fair across UK and international applicants. We want the portfolio to be discriminating between applicants in terms of allowing those who have higher level achievements to gain a greater points than others. But we also want to ensure that it widens participation, so there isn't points gained because people have had differential opportunities. We want it to be a fair and transparent process, and the appeals process there is a really important element of that. But we also want it to recognise that interest in a surgical career, and that's why the commitment to specialty domain remains. We believe that's a really important part of ensuring that we have those who are interested in a career in surgery ultimately within that pool that's selected. The portfolio changes do assess achievements that are open to all foundation doctors or equivalent. That's really important for widening participation. It does ensure a breadth of achievement can be assessed. So do remember that when you are looking at the domains and the scoring, we do not expect all candidates to be scoring at higher levels of each domain. We actually want that separation of scores to allow those who have had greater achievements to score differentially. We've done it to improve that consistency of assessment, as I've spoken about already, and also to ensure that we widen participation by eliminating differential opportunities from allowing people to score differently. Now, with that in mind, and with those 2 key priorities of having a new system for shortlisting, as well as changing the portfolio and ultimately the interview phase, we put forward a proposal to actually return the portfolio assessment into the interview phase and to make this part of a multi-station interview. So therefore, bring it back to how it was when it was face-to-face. We felt the importance of this was that the portfolio assessment could then allow within that station applicants to then be interviewed about their portfolio, to allow them to actually defend their portfolio and the evidence that they have presented. And we thought that added to that fair and transparent assessment. And certainly a multi-station interview feeds into what we want about multiple modalities of assessing candidates. Now, when we put forward that proposal, and that proposal was put forward initially in the summer of this year, MDRS wanted us to go back and rethink around the portfolio assessment and the multi-station interview, because they didn't feel that perhaps that was deliverable. And so as part of that, the refinement of the portfolio, the reduction in the need of evidence, MDRS finally approved the framework for 2023's recruitment at the end of September 2022. And that's really important as a timeline to let you be aware of, because without that final approval, one can't really then be able to, one's not really able to then communicate what 2023's recruitment will look like. And actually MDRS's approval came with a stipulation, and that was that they wanted us to pilot the portfolio verification phase as it is now, with the reduced slim down domains and reduction in evidence that will be required. To do that pilot, they wanted us to maintain the verification phase. Now, that was something we wished to avoid, to try to reduce that demand on consultant days. But what we've been able to do, because the domains are less and the evidence required is less, but also because the MSRA will be used as the shortlisting tool, there will be a smaller number of portfolios to verify than 2022. And we also believe that time taken for verification will be much shorter. So although it hasn't fully achieved the goal which we wanted, which was to almost eliminate the need for consultant assessors in a verification phase, it has significantly reduced the demand for 2023 of consultant assessors. So lastly then, we also looked at the interview. How would we wish to approach that, again to align to our priorities of continuing to evolve it to make it fit for purpose, transparent and fair? So the aims of the interview were to assess a surgically relevant breadth of knowledge, skills and behaviours based on foundation competences, based on what you would expect of a foundation doctor, but also allow us to differentiate that applicant ability in those domains through a progressive assessment. So that means allowing for scenarios that allow for candidates with that additional ability to continue to score in terms of how they go on and manage patients in those settings. And also, we wish to maintain that multiple opportunities for applicants to showcase their knowledge, skills and behaviours, so not simply ask the single question. And as you'll be aware from previous recruitment rounds, there's always been 2 clinical questions in the clinical element of the interview phase. So what do we change to align to those aims? Well, firstly, the assessment of leadership and management achievements are now being done through interview. And that's because of our belief that that can be better assessed more fairly and consistently outside of portfolio evidence. We'll also be refining the clinical questions to allow for exploration of applicant competence beyond simply that acute management and that initial setting which you'll often have in the clinical interviews. We also, to increase that transparency, that consistency, but also help to maintain an appropriate interview pool, is to engage and include senior trainees into that 2023 recruitment. So there will be trainee interviewers in that recruitment paired with consultant interviews. And ultimately our aim by 2024 is to deliver a multi-station assessment, so a portfolio phase that sits during your interview, where hopefully we will also be able to allow applicants to defend their portfolio in an interview. Okay, so having discussed therefore then through the presentation the aims of core recruitment, why based on our review of 22 recruitment we needed to change, and our process and our review of information and validation to allow us to do that, I'll now just deliver for you what 2023 recruitment looks like. So the application window will open at the end of this week, and that will stay open for a month. Individuals then be asked to submit that application on the Oriel system. And at the point of submitting their application, they will also be asked to submit their self-assessment score for their portfolio. No evidence will be required at this stage, but they will be asked to submit their self-assessment score. Once long listing has been completed, which is based on eligibility criteria, an invite will then go out to all long listed applicants to book their MSRA test no later than the 20th of December. That test window will then be from the 5th of January to the 17th of January. Now, on the 31st of January, the evidence upload portal opens, and all applicants will then be asked to upload their evidence to support their self-assessment score. That portal will remain open until the 10th of February. We will then have the results of the MSRA test and then the verification of those portfolios by the 23rd of February. So the aim is that with the result of the MSRA test, we will have the top 1,200 applicants. That is our interview capacity for 2023. It will then only be those 1,200 applicants whose evidence will then be taken forward to be verified. Based on that MSRA test score and that top 1,200 applicants, all of those applicants will then be invited to interview. So just to be clear, from the MSRA test, applicants will move forward into a portfolio verification phase and the interview. The portfolio verification will then give you the portfolio score, which comprises 30% of the final score, and the interview, both the clinical, comprising 30%, and the leadership and management section, comprising 30%, therefore gives you 90% of the score. Your MSRA test will then give you the final 10%. And it is based then on that final score, following your interviews, which will take place between the 9th of March and the 22nd of March, that we will then start to release offers for core surgery. Okay. So I'm really sorry about the IT glitch in the middle of all of this, but I have finished us just about on time, and I'll open now for any questions. So if you have completed that in the chat box, I think our HE team will then now sort of bring that together in themes, and then I'll try to answer as many questions as I can for however long we have remaining. So I'll just stop presenting at this point, and hopefully I'll be back on main screen. So Alan, would you like to just field those questions?
Yeah, thanks, Denny. So a lot of that, so some of the themes coming up are around about the discrepancies and obviously lack of transparency in terms of notifying assets and BOTA. In conjunction with the statements that have been released with introducing the MSRA.
Okay. So I mean, there've been a number of conversations that have taken place both with Asset and BOTA around this and following the release of this. I don't think the detail of which would be sort of appropriate to be discussed through here. All we can say is that there are trainee representatives on the MDRS working group that approved it. There are trainee representatives at the C core surgery steering group, and things moved within that summer time frame based on some of that validity data that we were able to use. One of the challenges we very much faced was that the data that was given to us, there were embargoes around how that could be shared, whether that could be shared, in fact wasn't able to be shared, and I think some of that was very challenging, but but certainly that data is going to be shared and has been shared in a more complete form with Asset and Bota as soon as we've been able to. So I think that's perhaps what I would say around that. And of course, there was a statement released by the heads of the 4 nation heads for recruitment in response to the Asset letter that came out addressing those Asset issues, and that data will be shared publicly around a lot of what we've spoken about tonight, really, and some of the stuff that I've actually presented already.
Thanks, Fanny. And some of the other questions coming through are, I suppose, about implementing the MSRA, I suppose, a month before applications open, so trainees not giving enough notice to changes to the application process.
Yeah, so I think part of it is, one, actually getting that final approval that recruitment process is exactly that recruitment process. And so we didn't get that final approval until September to allow us to do that. We've got the validation of using the MSRA. We've also got the knowledge around what it's there for. So the MSRA, there will be materials there to support applicants with regards to taking the test. The test is in January, so it's still another 2.5 months away. The test is a test really that the scores, as I've said earlier in the presentation, if core surgery follows every other recruitment, are not going to change significantly. So the scores that this cohort are going to take and the mean scores are going to predict to be very similar to the scores that next year's cohort will take, who will have had an additional year knowing about the MSRA. And I think that reflects to some extent around how much you can prepare for this test. And how much you need to do to prepare for that test. I appreciate that actually any new test comes with it, that anxiety around it, and all of us inherently would want to prepare as much as possible. Some of and certainly some of the data around it is that although you do require familiarity with it, preparation isn't the same as preparing for the MRCS or preparing for tests that you might call as traditional. And we've implemented, as has every other recruitment, in terms of not having a year of sort of having it as a pilot or alongside our current recruitment, and that's because we've already had a de facto pilot of 2,000 applicants have already taken it who've gone through core surgery over the last 3 years.
And some of the other themes are coming out again. It's about obviously the announcement of the MSRA so late and the impact it will have on people's mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very much a very big question, and a very big thing that feeds into mental health and well-being. So I can't answer specifically on that. What I will say to you is that if the 2023 cohort behaves like the cohort of the last few years, a third of your colleagues who are going into core recruitment will already have been preparing to sit the MSRA test. So a very significant bunch of applicants and sort of peers of yours will already have been preparing or being aware that they're going to take that test. It is a test that hopefully, as I said, it is a test that certainly for the professional dilemmas paper, there isn't a lot of preparation around it. Hopefully it tests, and it does test your competences you will be acquiring through foundation. And it's not a test to achieve a certain score. There's not a pass mark. It's a test to actually allow us to shortlist. So it's a test to see how you compare against your peers. And that's what it's there for, really, because shortlisting is absolutely essential. And without this, if we use the 2022 recruitment framework, one of the biggest threats is that we wouldn't be able to deliver recruitment. And I think if recruitment just failed next year and we weren't able to actually deliver it, and so we had no offers to be able to give out for 2023, I think the impact of that would be much more sizable.
And I think so a couple of other points that come up. So somebody's asked about what is the rationale for taking out the MR Part A exam from the portfolio?
So that was mandated to be taken out by MDRS, so it wasn't a decision from us, but also part of the rationale was that it was strongly opposed by all heads of schools of surgery and all core surgery TPDs, because it was encouraging a practice of individuals almost perhaps being forced or feel obliged to sit the MRCS Part A whilst they're in foundation training, which is effectively what the vast majority of our applicant pool is. And the offshoot of that was there are a significant number of individuals coming into core surgery who've had single or multiple failures of MRCS Part A prior to them being in a core surgery training environment where there is the support available to take you through that. And so many individuals burn a lot of attempts, and that can cause a lot of issues and make it very high stakes in the future, the Part A. Actually for a lot of well-being issues that our core surgery programs have, there was a lot of clamour really to not have that, but ultimately that decision was made for us by MDRS.
And I think just a couple of other points is I think some people have raised the issue about obviously revising for the MSRA. Like there's been highlighted that no one really needs to revise to sit the exam.
Yeah, so again, it's challenging that the way the MSRA steering group write those questions, that what it tests, certainly in the professional dilemmas paper, there's certainly a need to have familiarity. And as I've said, additional resources will be made available to all applicants prior to them sitting the test in January to help with that. So there is a familiarity certainly that should be sort of acquired, but from a revisional point of view, there shouldn't be there isn't necessarily something to revise. For the clinical paper, it should be an assessment of what you're already gaining in foundation competencies in your foundation educational programs that cover all elements of knowledge, skills, behaviours, and it is set at that level. It is set at a level that one would expect of a foundation doctor. So again, it very much, I think, will appreciate that any diligent individual is going to try to, in inverted commas, revise, but it should minimise the need for that and more really about the familiarity of how those questions are being asked with regards to being prepared for the test.
A final theme to come out is in terms of the changes to the process. So why do you look at I think in terms of consultant days when looking at the overall kind of recruitment process?
Why do we look at consultant days? So I'm not sure I understand it, but I think, as I said, the overwhelming drive for the need to change from last year's recruitment to this year's recruitment is that we found as every single specialty recruitment has found, that actually consultant assessors to come out to be able to deliver a recruitment process as large as ours has posed huge challenges. When we put consultant days, that's probably the best way to reflect the amount of consultant time that's given. So when I talk about 180 consultant days, it's not 180 consultants, because some will offer more than one day, but actually that's the amount of time they're taking away from the NHS clinical practice. And one of the demands that MDRS place on us is to find the most efficient way to deliver recruitment that limits the time consultants have away from their clinical practice. And that's a mandate to all recruitment programs. But moreover than that, we found that delivering such a large recruitment process, assessing 2,500 applicants, 1,600 at portfolio, and as I say, that dwarfs every other surgical specialty recruitment, needs a large number of assessors. And where you can recruit a large number of assessors, but actually, if we're not able to deliver that for a variety of reasons, and consultant assessors aren't available at short notice where they had been, getting substitutes is incredibly challenging, and actually we weren't able to do that on all days, and therefore a lot of the workload then went back onto the steering group to do a lot of portfolio verifications in that window in evenings and weekends to actually deliver all of the portfolio verification, and that's not a sustainable or resilient process. And those individuals gave up a huge amount of time additionally to do that, and you can't rely on that year on year. And the trend generally is that we're getting less and less engagement with regards to assessors for any recruitment process across any specialty. So we needed something more resilient, because if it fell down, recruitment falls down for us, and then we're not able to offer any posts for start of August 2023, which would be an absolute disaster. So I think that's the really absolute key thing at the heart of why we absolutely had to do something differently for 2023 recruitment. And that the consultant days was just a way of telling you about how much of a need we had for that time from our consultants who give their time up freely.
Thank you, Zenny. I say all the other questions that people have posted, these will be downloaded, and we'll be producing an FAQs, and we'll aim to circulate a link to those FAQs to across our various contacts. And also this webinar will be made available on the HE YouTube site, and again, obviously we'll circulate the link for that as well.
That's great, thank you, Alan. So I think, I don't know if it was just me, but I think you were cutting it out a little bit. That might have been on my end, or I don't know if everyone else was experiencing that. But as Alan said, we will look at all of everything on the chat box, put out something from the FAQs perspective around answering those. And if you do have anything more that you wish, as I said at the very beginning, that you wish to be included, that gives more clarity around recruitment for this year, how in terms of the process, or around the MSRA and the information that's available already about the test itself and resource materials, and please do also put that into those forms, and we will try to address that.
Thank you, Sunny.